So, a reminder to mute yourselves if you're not speaking. And let's start with some conscious breathing. Breathing at your own pace and truly paying attention to the breath. And remembering the breath is life. Our life begins with our first breath as we come out of the womb, and our life ends with the last breath. And I don't believe our existence begins or ends at that point. But our experience in this human body, this amazing body temple that we get to spend time in, is all about the breath. And a reminder that with our breath, we connect to our body. And if you wish, we can also cultivate connection to the heavens, connection to the earth, and imagine them meeting in our heart. And the tools that we're learning, the tools of compassionate communication specifically, it is the pathway of the heart. How can we connect? How can we communicate? How can we talk about the hard stuff and stay in our heart? How can we stay in our heart even when there's things happening in the world, either on the macro level or on the micro level, that are so painful, so hard, so different than what we want? How can we stay in our heart? Today's class is all about that. Today we're going to learn some of my favorite tools of how to stay connected to our heart and to stay in a state of acceptance and compassion even when we're so tempted or we're so used to going into judgment, blame, shame, criticism, make wrong. We're going to work on how to adjust and adapt. And how to have quality conversations, even when it's hard. And so I want to thank each and every one of you for being here. Thank you for your commitment to being a compassionate communicator, to spending your Saturday morning, or in some cases afternoon, learning these tools. Thank you. And I invite you to celebrate yourself for your commitment, your devotion, your humility, your dedication to making your life and the life of people around you better by learning and practicing these skills, these tools. Thank you, and thank you, self. Take that in. And like we've done once before, I want you to remember a time that you learned something that changed your life. Pick one specific moment where you learned something that completely changed some part of your life. Feel the gratitude for that moment, for that teaching, for that aha. And I invite you now to commit that today's going to be one of those days. For some of you, you've seen some of this work before. For some of you, this is going to be brand new. But whether you're new or returning, making the commitment that, wow, I'm going to take this in at the deepest level I possibly can. And I'm going to work with this tool and these practices every day. Every day. Make that commitment. Thank you. Aho, ashe, amen. And it's nice for me to open my eyes and see all these amazing people, all these people that I love. Hello, everybody. So we're going to be primarily working with what's now the 12 adjustments. It started about 10 years ago with the 4 adjustments, and then the 4 became 5. And then the 5 became 7, and I taught the 7 adjustments for many, many years. But then Emily came along, and it became the 11, and we're now up to 12. So this is a master relationship class. So we're going to be going over the 12 adjustments. And by way of establishing this, what we're going to be looking at is that there are certain habits that we have of the way that we think, the way that we listen, and the way we speak. And some of those habits have a lot of judgment, blame, shame, criticism, make wrong thinking attached and connected. I've already used the word a few times. These are habits. They're not our true nature. What's our true nature? Well, let's think about an infant. An infant is pure. An infant hasn't been programmed with the ways of the world. An infant is just in its body doing its thing. Do infants judge? Do infants look at their mom and go, whoa, I wanted a blonde? No, they don't do that, right? Infants can vomit, crap, and piss all over themselves. Do they feel shame? No. They feel uncomfortable, but they don't feel shame, right? So blame and shame and judgment and criticism and evaluation and all of that happens in the mind. And they are habits that we've picked up in our life. And what we're going to be working with today is how to change those habits of thinking, listening, and communicating that create separation. So I am looking at it on gallery view. I'm not going to call on anybody yet, but by raise of hands, who has changed a habit in their life? Who's changed a habit? Come on, we all have, right? We all have. So how do we change a habit? There's 2 primary things. I'm in the change business. I help people change all day long. We have to acknowledge, I really want to make this change, right? The harmful consequences of my choice are outweighing the positive parts of the choice. So we have to really make that commitment to change. And then we need to do something different, right? Because you can't, like if you, let's say you're going from eating junk food to eating healthy, you got to still put something in your body. It's the same thing with our thinking. You can't, if you say to a child, if they know there's a Christmas present in the closet, you can't say, don't think about the Christmas present in the closet. It's just, all they're going to do is think about the Christmas present in the closet, right? So we have to give the mind something else to do, right? We go from smoking to breathing to doing yoga. We go from friends that are a hurtful influence or a negative influence to friends that are a helpful influence. We have to fill the space with something that we deem to be healthier than what we had been doing. Does that make sense to everybody? Right? Debbie Garcia is leading the singles movement, which I'm not so sure. I'm not thrilled with being single these days, but I'm making the best of it. But She's leading the singles movement. And in there, and I say this with total respect, there is the, okay, I will not do an unhealthy relationship. I will not do a relationship where I'm ever giving my time or my power away again. So I'm embracing me. I'm embracing relationship with me, which is powerful, right? So it's still, there is that movement of one way of being with another way of being. Does it make sense to everybody? Yeah, and let's all twinkle Debbie, single Debbie, although she always has the dog. I want to acknowledge the dog is always there. So, you know, yeah, exactly. Okay, so I am going to bring up what we're going to be working with today. And it's the 12 adjustments. And I want to acknowledge that it's really developed over time. Can everybody see that beautiful chart? Great. And we're going to go through it piece by piece. And I'm going to ask each of you, and I'm going to periodically come back to the group and ask you what comes up. All the words on the left-hand side are the habits we want to change. These are the habits that keep us in the prison of negative thinking, hurtful relationships, life, more short-term ways of thinking, life alienating ways of expressing ourselves or listening. And again, like we just established, if we're going to change a habit, we have to go from one thing to another. And so the words on the green side, the right-hand side, are what we want to adopt as a difference, as the new way of being. And I want to acknowledge the first ones we're going to work with, from resistance to willingness. God bless her soul. That actually came from my wife, Suchi. I think I told you that I started with 4 adjustments. And this was before I was doing sessions online. I was doing my sessions at home. And Suchi would kind of overhear. And then after the sessions, I'd talk to her. And she was the one who brought up, you know, honey, I'm noticing that the people that you work with who really get it are willing to learn. That was back when I was really heavily teaching compassionate communication. So they're the ones who are willing to learn compassionate communication. And the ones that you struggle with are the ones who are resisting it. Wow, boom. So thank you, Suchi. We have to start with acknowledging, where do I have resistance? And where am I willing? And I want to talk about that for a minute. Because years have gone by in my own personal growth, and I've now worked with well over 1,000 clients and 500 couples. I mean, right away, I look to see how willing is each person to see the other in a new way, to listen to what I have to say, to how willing are they to practice compassionate communication. Willingness is huge. And if they're not willing, it's okay. What's the resistance? Oh, wow, Sharon Hinckley has joined us. All want to twinkle, one of my oldest and dearest friends, Sharon Hinckley, who is a brilliant compassionate communicator. So this is going to be a nice review for Sharon.
A long time.
Long time.
We can.
Absolutely. It's great to see you. Welcome. Really happy to see you.
Mm.
So when there's resistance, we don't make the resistance bad or wrong. We explore it. Because that resistance is almost always connected to some part of us that's wanting to protect us. When we do this subpersonality work a little bit down the line, I'll talk about how most of us, almost everybody I work with, has what I call their subpersonality that's the protector. The part of us that protects us from opening our heart, that protects us from going down a path where we think we could get hurt. Right? So our resistance very often is connected to our inner protector. So I've done a lot of talking, and I want to open it up to anybody who wants to share anything that comes up for you about from willingness to resistance. Laura. Always love to hear from you.
Hi guys. Good morning, everyone. I'm a hypnotherapist, so one of the things that I always notice is whenever somebody wants to change a behavior, we, we try to work with like what is it doing for them and how to replace it with, because it's usually about soothing. So, and how to find other ways to soothe ourselves so that we don't feel like we're, having something taken away. And so I'm just sort of complimenting the first part of this class that you talked about how, it's really important to find that other thing to replace it with that is healthy. And it doesn't have to be this huge shift. It can be like a gradual, like, oh, and just the other thing that I want to say, it's really allowing, I think that it works better when we allow space for a little bit of relapse, like it's okay. I did it again, and I always say to my clients, well, in 15 times from now, I'll be a lot more practiced in this thing, just allowing so that I don't go into the cycle of doing the bad behavior again because I messed up.
Beautiful. Beautiful. That's all twinkle, Laura, for the wisdom and being our first person to share today. Thank you. Who else knows something coming up for you on Debbie Garcia?
Good morning, everybody. So I love that what you just shared, Laura and Scott. That it's awesome. What I've noticed is that it's the brain entrainment when we're retraining our conscious to our subconscious. And Laura, you're a hypnotherapist, so you work with this, and I love that. But it's that repetition of doing it over and over, taking that small step and then just integrating it. But when I want to go to the shift over to the 12 adjustments really quick, because honestly, those have been the most powerful. Sorry about the noise, it just started. I'll hurry. It's been the most powerful tool that Scott's had. He had the 7 when I started with him and upgraded to the 12. And the willingness to know what's real for another person has been an absolute lifesaver for me. To be able to shift over into that compassionate state and really consider that other human being in my heart and what's really going on for them right now, what must be going on for them. And it's just probably, I love these tools. This is my favorite one of all time. And it's that tool curiosity, because when I use that with myself, I'm able to really just stop and take that pause. And I also want to say that on the singles movement, what I'm doing is I'm learning boundaries as I go. And Scott, I'm with you. I didn't say being singles my calling in life. What I am saying is that I've learned to be willing to be curious. Do I love myself enough to set the proper boundaries, which Scott, you've guided me on. So wherever we're at, learning new ways to be okay with who we are, where we sit. But when we're interacting with others, this 12 adjustments, I mean, you're going to go down the line, but I mean, there's some other favorites, and that appreciation. So I'm just going to step in appreciation for all of you right now, and for Scott for sharing this, because appreciation and gratitude have been my big ultimate, when I can step truly and cultivate that feeling of appreciation, gratitude as a space of being in, rather than just a feeling, I see true transformational shifts with whatever I'm dealing with. It doesn't matter what I'm dealing with. So anyway, I'm going to.
Thank you. That's all Twinkle Debbie for that burst of wisdom, gratitude, and very positive energy. Thank you, Debbie. Thank you. Yeah. And this is one of those, whatever you please, print this out several times. Put it on your refrigerator. Put it in your bathroom. I've already put the PDF into our Relationship Mastery Facebook thread, and it's a really valuable document. Okay, I want to get through it, and we've got a lot to do today, so I am going to go back to the document, and we're going to kind of go down the line a little bit. Everybody able to see it okay? Okay. So the second one is actually, again, one of my favorite ones. I mean, they're all great, but going from make wrong to curiosity. You guys, curiosity is such a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful quality. And may we all, as we get older, become more curious, not less. And I got to talk about this and get some feedback on it. So as it gets, I have such an interesting job because I work with people that are going through really hard stuff. And the ones that are the least curious suffer the most and change the least. And the ones who are most curious are the happiest and are most likely to enjoy life. It's a really interesting phenomenon. And I always like to, when I talk about curiosity, I might have said it in a previous class, there was this book that I read, and it was interviews with couples who had been happily married for 40 years or more. And they all talk about curiosity as the key. I'm still fascinated with him. I'm so curious about what she has to say. Every day is a new discovery, right? Einstein, one of the most brilliant minds that we have ever known, he was all about curiosity, right? All about imagination. And remember that there are two types of curiosity. There's childlike wonder and there's prosecutorial. There's, wow, why'd you do that? And there's, why did you do that? Right? So sometimes we might be asking a question, but if we're asking it with the tone of prosecution, a tone of make wrong, that's not curious. That's collecting evidence. That's being, an attorney. So just childlike wonder. Again, I think I used the analogy earlier in a previous class, the movie E.T., where Elliot and the E.T. is so fascinated with each other. They're so curious about each other, right? So curiosity is so incredibly important. So obviously I'm pretty passionate about that, and just curious I'm curious if anybody has anything they want to say about that. Anything that comes up for anyone? Yeah. Sharon Hinckley.
Yes. Well, when you were saying that, I was feeling really happy because I thought, wow, some of this stuff is actually sticking. And the part where you talk about the tone of voice being the most important thing, I can work on my tone of voice. And I try to talk to myself first before I jump into something. And I even if I am angry, I could still ask the question nicely.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. Even if I'm angry, I can still ask the question nicely. That's a good one. Did I see Daniel Mo?
I wanted to add one thing. I'll make it really short, but I was stopped by a traffic policeman in Prescott, Arizona. And I was flunking all the questions. No, I didn't know how fast I was going. I didn't blah, blah, blah. And I guess I'd come from a training with you. And so I was practicing looking at everything in a positive way. So the policeman said to me, "Do you know where you're going?" And I said, "No, thank you for stopping me. Will you help me?" And not only did I not get the ticket, he gave me directions for a better way through town and told me where all the rest of the speed traps were.
Wow. That's a great story, Sharon.
I liked it.
Yeah, I do remember that story from before. That's a good one. All right, let's all twinkle Sharon. I think I saw Daniel Mo raise his hand. Is that true?
Yeah, I have this habit from my men's group that when somebody says something that I relate to, I raise my hand.
Okay. And I did see Laura raising her hand, so we're going to go to Laura.
Hi guys. I just want to say that what I notice, usually I bring up uncomfortable feelings in our relationship, and as soon as I notice that it's getting uncomfortable, I feel it right in my solar plexus, and I just try to pause and drop right into curiosity. Now, I don't say to Rob, "Hey, I'm getting curious," but I just feel that because I know that curiosity is the only thing that's going to make at least us build a bridge of, wonder and like, let's get out of blame and shame.
Beautiful. Thank you for doing that. And thank you for that modeling. So, just one last thing on this, then we'll continue with the chart. The other side of it, what was in the red, we really haven't talked about, and that's make wrong. And so it is really important for us to commit ourselves to noticing, when am I in make wrong? When do I think I'm right and the other person's wrong? And come on, we all do that a lot, especially when it comes to politics or religion or our sacred belief systems, right? And so, wow, like for me, I've been trying to, if I meet somebody who, for example, I'm just going to say it, who thinks that Trump is just doing an awesome job and is this great thing for the country, I really try and practice curiosity of where they're coming from. Why do they see it that way? And it feels better to be curious and take in their reality than it does to be in the fixated place of, how wrong they are, right? It actually feels better because it's not going to change what Trump does or doesn't do anyway, right? So the more that I can be curious, and I'm in a group where I'm with people that have very different belief systems. It's a group that I'm participating in. It's too complicated to explain about it, but it's been fascinating hearing from people that have very radically different belief systems than I do, or than we do. And that's where the curiosities come in. But I have to catch it. I have to keep noticing how much make wrong goes on inside my brain. Because I've been teaching this stuff for a long time. I'm pretty good about not saying it, but it still goes on inside my brain, right? There's a lot of make wrong that still goes on in there. So just, again, part of this practice is noticing, when do I think when am I in self-righteousness? When do I think I'm right and the other person's wrong, right? That's part of this discipline, right? Like, we all want to reach towards curiosity, but we also have to notice when we are not there. Does it make sense to everybody? Yeah. So there's part of your homework assignment. Notice when you're in make wrong, okay? All right, let's go to the next one. Everybody see it okay? From judgment to compassion. Oh, well, there's a big one, right? And I mean, that's what this whole course is about, really. This whole course is going from judgment to compassion. And remember that the way we do that, the way we do it in a practical way, is anytime we have a judgment, it's because some of our needs are not being met or are being threatened by our perception of that person. So I'm going to stay with Trump. If anybody is a Trump supporter, I don't mean to offend you, but I have a lot of judgment of Trump. So I judge his, in my sense, my perception, how often he lies and how often he bullies. So the judgment, he's a liar, he's a bully. Underneath that are my unmet needs for kindness, consideration, and honesty. So now we pivot. I can stay focused and say 1,000 times, he's a liar, he's a bully. And as I'm saying that and I'm judging him, it doesn't feel great. It doesn't feel good. But when I shift into, wow, I notice how I long to have a president that's honest and kind and considerate. It begins to shift. I begin to think of Jimmy Carter, right? I begin to, appreciate my values, my perceived values, or my perception of who Jimmy Carter is, right? It's a perception. I never met the man. But, And so we start shifting into, okay, these are my values, right? So I start shifting out of the judgmental thinking and more into my values. And then now comes the really challenging part. Why does Trump do that? Why are those his strategies? What is he really needing? And that's where the compassion comes in. He's probably really desperately longing to stay in control. He's desperately longing to be loved, respected. Now, his strategies to stay in control, they don't meet my values. There's strategies, right? The bullying, the dishonesty are strategies to meet ultimately his value for safety. He's trying to keep himself safe and probably trying to be respected and trying to stay in control. And remember, the more we have to lose as human beings, the more likely we are to choose control as a strategy for safety. I'm going to say that again. And thank you, Sharon, for the things you write down in the chat box. Really appreciate that. The more we have to lose, the more we will choose control as a strategy for safety. If you think about the most controlling dictators or people you know personally, think about it. I bet you anything they have a lot to lose. They have a lot of employees, they have a lot of money, they have a lot of something that they're trying to hold on to. So when we perceive somebody as being very controlling, you can go from the judgment of, he's so controlling, to, wow, he's really trying to meet his need for safety. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, is able to catch that? So one last thing that made a really big impression on me, and you can, if you want to do this, you can do what I'm about to describe. So Saddam Hussein was obviously really painted, you know, probably rightfully so, as a horrific, brutal dictator who ordered a lot of people killed and did terrible things. And I first started teaching about control and safety when, you know, the Iraq War was happening and Saddam Hussein was the great evil guy that, you know, the country was after. And, you know, they finally, when they found him, right, they found this guy who had been like so powerful, you know, the main guy in his country. They found him hiding in a pipe. Found him hiding in a pipe. So they tried him and they chose to execute him. And as he was about to be executed, one of the guards who was there had a cell phone and recorded his last minute of life. And you can YouTube it. You can find it on YouTube. And it's very powerful to see this man that we all had, or most people had, a real image as being this really evil, horrible guy, which on some level he probably clearly was. But seeing him trying to hold his dignity together in his last minute of life as they're putting the noose around his neck, they hung him. It's a really powerful moment to go from someone we had such a collective judgment on into the tremendous compassion of a human being who's about to lose his life and who's trying so hard to maintain his composure and his dignity in this last moment. And so it all kind of goes together. It's like even Trump, even Saddam Hussein, even the people that we villainize, they are perfectly human. And everything they're doing is a desperate attempt to meet their own needs. And that is how we move from judgment to compassion. We just look at what are my needs that are not being met or that are being threatened that causes the judgment. And whatever that person's doing, what needs are they trying to meet? How's that land for everybody? Anything, yeah, I'm seeing Naya. Any thoughts, comments, reflections? Debbie.
Okay. Hi again, everyone. Actually, I really appreciated what you just did and brought the human connection together and the divine connection and the removal of separation, because we are all connected. And and then I want to take a step back to the make wrong, because I want to share with you guys where I've taken it. I have my 5 de-dramatizing things that I do, and the very first one is stop needing to be right. Losing my need to be right. And I've had this shit happen mostly with my son lately, because I don't have anybody else to really practice with, but I've had it with other people too. I've got people online with different belief systems. I've got hosts on Spirituality Gone Wild. Not all of us agree with everything, but that's okay, because losing my need to be right and allowing the other person their need to be right, or their ability to be right without me making them wrong. But I had to first lose that. I just completely. And I get tugged at that one a lot, but I always go back to, okay, lose this need to be right, because it's just going to turn me into making them wrong, you know, because I don't give my power away this way. When I'm having to convince somebody how right I am, I'm stepping into giving away my power is the other one. And just so, and it's allowing the other to have their contrast. So Trump's got his contrast, dude. He's all of it is, everybody is having this contrast for our growth and for a reason. And so the need to be right falls right into the contrast. And sometimes I have found myself with my son, I want to tell him I'm right because of my experience, and stop him from having to experience something I don't want him to. But the fact is, if I lose the need to be right and respect where he's at and his growth, I'm going to practice the art of non-interference with his contrast. And it is a big one to bite off when it comes to your kids. Major. Yeah. But anyway, that's all I gotta really say about that. But yeah, I mean, of course, seeing from a higher perspective is my other de-dramatizing, and loving myself as I am. Those are my 5, but it all goes to the make wrong in the 12 adjustments, because that's the biggest, that one right there, y'all know a make wrong means, like, if that doesn't get nipped in the butt like that fast, you know it's going to be probably time for an explosive interaction if you're trying to make somebody wrong, you know, or they're making you wrong. Okay, I'll be right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Debbie, can you maybe write those 5 your 5 de-dramatizings into the chat box? Yep.
Sure.
That'd be great. Thank you. Any other thoughts about the judgment? Yes, Sabrina.
I have a comment about this, what Debbie had just mentioned about, you know, if you go into make wrong, you're almost guaranteed to be in like conflict. Paul, he had a phrase called powerful vulnerability, and in application with, he said, what needs are being threatened? That's what puts us into judgment. My 15-year-old, she goes into judgment. It's rigidity. It's tough. My willingness to be wrong, not because of my age or not because of my belief system or even those things, but just because what Debbie said about wanting to be right when it's your child, because their perspective is not yours. Yeah. Those two things are never going to line up. They're not you. They're not you. So willingness to be wrong and willingness right there to go, oh my gosh, I'm so wrong. I literally, and I'm not being dramatic, I'm serious. I went to the floor. She's 15. I went to the floor. I said, I'm wrong. And she was so upset. It was a bad habit of mine, you know, something else that I'd done that she watches, because kids, they're going to repeat what they see and what they feel. Yeah. They're not going to go by what you say. They're going to go by what they feel. And that goes back to Rosenberg's 2 big things, safety. And am I connecting with mom? Is she really hearing me? I said, baby, I'm wrong. Don't be so hard on you. I'm wrong. So that powerful vulnerability, that willingness to be wrong is just like what Debbie was saying is, you know, don't make wrong. But what if you're wrong and you can just be like, I am so wrong. And then that silliness, Scott, that I've seen in when we were there at the retreat, and that willing to be silly too eases. It's kind of like levity with adults, but I found with the kids between 8 years old and now up to 15, 16, even the teenagers, because they're still somewhat back there with the hormones and the awkward, it just breaks right through. And then it's that powerful vulnerability. And then I'm now hearing it with their friends. And Debbie, I wonder with your kids too, watching you practice these things. And you're like, I'm trying to practice. But I've watched it with my kids and their friends too, because this ability to communicate and connect is what's really ravaging the millennials and the Zs. They're desperate to find a way just to be heard. Powerful vulnerability. So I'm done too, sorry.
Oh, thank you. It's all twinkle, Sabrina. Thank you, Sabrina. Thank you. And yeah, my hat's off to, I want to just say how hard it is to be a parent. Oh my God, finding that balance at any age, even our parents, like for those of you who still have parents that are alive, they're still struggling with wanting to teach you what they've learned, right? Because as we get older, we do want to convey to the kids what we've learned, but the kids want to learn it on their own, and they certainly don't want to be judged or, preached to. So just remember that at all levels, yes, Allison, I'll call on you in a second, at all levels, right? Whether you're the parent or the child, and whether you're, obviously any of you that are in the child mode, that means your parents are in their 70s, 80s, 90s, there's always that dynamic. There's always that dynamic. And so how can the parental role person present their wisdom or their point of view without the one in the child role feeling judged? That is really the key. That's the key. Because we still can feel judged by our parents when they're actually just trying to offer us their care. So what I always like to teach people, when you're in the child role, whether you're 5 years old or 50 years old and your parents are still trying to tell you something and you hear it as judgment, remember that it's their attempt to care for you. Whatever they've said, even if it's, Anna Prabha, when are you going to marry a doctor? Whether it's, Debbie, when are you going to stop being single, right? You hear it as a judgment or whatever. Only one response. Thank you, Mom, for your care. Thank you, Dad, for how much you care about me, right? Because that's always what it is. But the rebellious part of us, hears it as a judgment, right? When are you going to get a real job? When are you going to cut your hair? When are you going to, whatever it is, when are you going to buy a house? When are you going to vote Republican? Whatever it is, underneath it, there's care. It's their attempt to show care, right? So it's so important to remember that when we're in either side of the parent-child dynamic, and if we're in the parental role, what Debbie and Sabrina just said, acknowledging and respecting, not going into, I'm smarter, I know more than you do, but respecting them completely as a human being, all right? So, Allison, you're up.
Okay, I'm going to try to be succinct because I know you have a lot to cover. And I'm so thrilled to see everybody. So hello, good morning, friends. This has become a definite highlight of my week. So I, as you know, have two young children. I have a 7-year-old and a 10-year-old. And one thing that I have been trying to do is model that childlike curiosity, and also the ability to acknowledge when I'm wrong, not when I'm in conflict with them only, but just all the time. So, and I try to draw their attention to it, like, oh, wow, Mama made an assumption. Before I read that article, I thought they were going to talk about this, and I already had a judgment made up. And then when I actually read it, it wasn't saying that at all. And I think I really need to wait and not make a judgment until I've read the whole thing. Talking about, like, I've often, I teach non-bullying in classrooms for a project called Project Cornerstone. We often have kids share an idea, and then another child will come in and say, well, that's wrong because blah, 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 blah. And I often ask people first, before they respond, to say back what they heard the person saying and ask if they got it right before continuing. And I've noticed that on like really good news shows. For example, I watch Rachel Maddow a lot, and she always starts by asking the person she's interviewing, did I rephrase your, opinion, article, judgment correctly? Is that what you were saying? Or is there any part of that I got wrong? And I think it shows so much respect for the other person's perspective that even if you did get part of it wrong, they still don't feel attacked because you're giving them the opportunity to clarify. And I think for my kids, I often do that. I say, did I get that right? Am I hearing you right that you're needing this? And then they can say, no, Mom, I'm not needing this. I'm needing this other thing. But then they feel like I'm taking the time to respect them and listen to them fully and be willing to change my own interpretation based on their articulation. I'm done.
Beautiful. Big twinkle for Allison. Big twinkle for Allison. That was awesome. And I just really do want to acknowledge how each and every one of you is brilliant. Each and every one of you is on a mastership movement. And each of you are masterful and becoming more masterful as parents, as compassionate communicators, as coaches, as guides, as healers. It's a really powerful and wonderful group of people that are part of this. And I'm glad that Saturday mornings have become a big part of your week, Allison. That's really cool. All right, I am going to move on. Let's go back because each one of these is pretty juicy. All right. I'm going to probably come back to the group because there's so much to say about going from guilt to acceptance. Going from guilt to acceptance. So I'm not going to call on anybody, but by raise of hands, who feels guilty? Who goes through guilt? Who experiences guilt in their life? Only about half of you. Oh, no, more hands are coming up. Okay. So really memorize what I'm about to say, because this is, to be blunt, a really good Scott teaching. Underneath all guilt is care. Guilt, pardon my language, but it's really the best way of putting it. Guilt is a mind fuck. It is a self-judgment. It's a self-judgment. And under that self-judgment is your care. If you didn't feel guilty, you would be a sociopath, right? That's what makes a sociopath dangerous. A sociopath doesn't experience guilt. So for those of you who feel guilty, congratulations, you're not a sociopath. For those of you who didn't raise your hand, now I'm not so sure. Seriously, under guilt is care. And some of you have heard this story, but I'm going to briefly tell it again. One of the most powerful experiences of my life working with a client was a client who came to me who was an officer who had been stationed in Afghanistan, where he was the commanding officer of a convoy, and the convoy was attacked. And there was a vicious firefight. People died on both sides, and he had the horror of some of his men dying, and also the horror of pulling a trigger and watching someone that he die on the other side. He killed a person. He was so racked with guilt that when I first met him, he said, there are times I am too messed up to even do my own laundry. Of course, the Army had him on all sorts of meds, and he was on leave trying to get his head together. And his name was Jesse. And God bless Jesse. He was suffering from about the worst belief system a person could have. I am responsible for people dying. Now, I don't think there's anybody in this room, right, who has a guilt that big. We all have some guilt, probably. And so my job was to help Jesse transition from the perception of I'm responsible for people dying, which was an interpretation he had developed that was keeping him crippled and paralyzed. Because when we are in guilt, it triggers the freeze reaction of our reptile brain, and we go into paralysis. The more guilty you feel, the more paralyzed you will be. It's like a mathematical equation almost. It's a biological equation. And so I had to help him start understanding what a deeply caring man he was. And he was a deeply caring man who was in an impossible situation. And by the way, he did exactly what he had been trained to do. The Army gave him medals and awards because he handled it the way he had been trained. Right? And he was in a terrible, impossible situation. And in his years since that had happened, he studied about the Afghan people and came to realize, oh my God, we're the invaders. These people were just defending their homeland, right? We were the invaders, right? Well, that's what a deeply caring man would do, right? He didn't justify what happened. He was curious, right? What we talked about earlier, curiosity. So I thought, so I worked with him on changing his way of thinking and his way of looking. And I realized he's got to start caring for something. He's got to get a dog. He was so not ready for a dog. No, what if the dog dies? What if the dog dies? So he started with a hamster. So he gets a hamster, but then he felt bad that the hamster was alone, so he got another hamster. And he's reading all sorts of books about hamsters. He lived in Flagstaff, Arizona, and he would send me photographs. His apartment turned into hamster heaven. There were tubes and little wheels, and the globes where the hamsters are not just on a wheel, but then these little globes. These little globes are flying around the front, the front room of this guy's house. Jesse's house became a hamster heaven, and he learned how to take good care of the hamsters. And then finally, it took about 1.5 years, he finally was ready to get a dog. And he slowly began to realize that he was a deeply caring man. And this was all about 6-7 years ago that I started working with him. Probably 6 years ago I started working with him. He now has a radio show where he helps returning vets, and he's got a good, healthy partnership. It turns out he's gay, and he's got a wonderful gay lover. That's a whole other thing that emerged. And he's a deeply caring man, and he's a happy, healthy guy again. And it all comes down to the transition of I'm bad, I'm wrong because I didn't do this or I did that, into I'm a deeply caring person, and reinforcing the deep care. So just remember, anything you feel guilty about, I feel guilty I don't call my mother enough, it's because you care about your mother. I feel guilty that I was so sharp with my husband or my kids, it's because you care about your kids, you care about your husband or your whoever it is. Some anchored into everybody. And then in the 12 adjustments, right, it's from guilt to acceptance. Jesse had to accept he was in a terrible situation, and he did what he had been trained to do. He had to accept he pulled a trigger and somebody died. He had to accept people he cared about died. I have guilt, something called survivor's guilt, that my wife died. It's something I've had to work with. Now, I wasn't responsible for her death in any way, but I've had to learn how to manage the survivor's guilt. Wow, she died, and I now own a home that she primarily paid for. I get to enjoy the home and she's gone, right? And then underneath that, that triggered for me learning how to cope with my survivor's guilt about my parents. My parents gave everything to me and they lost the marriage. So survivor's guilt is something I've personally had to work with, right? And within that, it's been the acceptance. My wife died. My parents got divorced. And learning how to accept and be present to what is spiritual mastery. It's the non-religious, the non-denominational spiritual practice for everyone. Learning how to radically accept. Now, acceptance doesn't mean we have to like it. Acceptance doesn't mean we condone hurtful behavior or choices. Acceptance doesn't mean we quit or we give up. Acceptance means we start with what is. We stop trying to change the past. We stop trying to change who we are right in the moment. I'm in the change business. People pay me money to help them change. I've learned change is built on a foundation of acceptance. What does that look like? When somebody comes to me and they share that they have a cocaine addiction or they cheated on their wife, if I judge them, I'm not going to get very far. If I absolutely radically accept how perfectly human, I'm not saying what you did was right or wrong, but I understand you did that because you were so desperate for connection. You were so desperate for release or whatever it was. Again, what I talked about, under the judgment, and I might have judgmental thoughts, what needs were they trying to meet? I acknowledge the beauty of the needs they were trying to meet. Oh, now they don't feel judged. They can trust me as a coach. They can trust me as a guide. The change starts with acceptance. Now, as a coach, accepting them is really beautiful and helpful. But the most important thing is for them to accept themselves. Because until we can accept ourselves, until we can accept our addiction, our shadow side, our compulsions, until we can accept the things we've said or done that we feel guilty about, we hide in the shadow. I'll say it again. Until we can accept the things we feel guilty about, some part of us hides in the shadow. So practicing acceptance is the way out of guilt. Yes, I spoke poorly to someone I love. I ignored somebody in need. I was selfish and it had a hurtful consequence on a family member. I pulled a trigger and somebody died. Now, I don't think any of us have pulled the trigger on a gun, but we sure have all pulled the trigger on saying something that was hurtful to another person. We've all done that. We've all pulled that trigger. And when we pulled that trigger, it's because we were desperate to be heard or to stop the pain. And we have to accept, I did that. I was so desperate to stop the pain. I was so desperate to stop this person from yelling at me or hurting me. So I pulled a trigger knowing that if I said this, it would bring them to their knees. We've all pulled the trigger. And we have to radically accept it. Doesn't mean it's okay. Doesn't mean we like it. Doesn't mean we want to repeat it. But in order to change it, we have to accept, oh my God, I did that. And then underneath that, what need was I trying to meet? Because that helps me to learn, wow, when I'm desperate for relaxation and play, I can drink too much alcohol. When I'm desperate to stop my partner from saying something hurtful, I can say something hurtful back to them. When I'm desperate to meet my need for safety, I can become very controlling. Whatever it is. And that's where the self-reflection comes in. To come to that acceptance, we have to self-reflect. Oh, wow, that's my inner child. That's the protector coming in to protect my inner child. Whatever it is, that's where we have to dive deep. Sometimes with a coach, sometimes you can do it by yourself. Oh, wow, I so want to be respected. And that's why I do those things that actually are hurtful. Whatever it is. So one last piece on this. When you are ready to face something you've said or done that you regret, you can accept it when you understand the needs you were trying to meet. And to the degree that what you did had a really hurtful consequence, I promise you, you'll notice you were desperate to meet some need or value. The dictator who's desperate to meet his need for safety, so he kills his rival. Trump, desperate to be respected or to maintain his power, so he bullies and he lies. As my mother would say, but for the grace of God, there go I. If I was Jesse in that situation, I probably would have pulled the trigger. If I was you in any of the situations that you've been in, I probably would have done what you did, and vice versa. How perfectly human. So radical acceptance is the key to alleviating the horror of guilt and the guilt that keeps us in paralysis. And one last thing I'll say, the ironic thing is the best people I know, the people I know who I've gotten to know that are really wonderful human beings, they play small because they have so much compassion, they have so much care, and they feel guilty about the things they have done that were funky. So they play small because they don't want to get too big, because they don't want to hurt anybody on a bigger level. The Trumps of the world, the sociopaths, become the dictators because they don't have that compassion, right? It's a really weird thing. So for those of us that are deeply caring people, we've got to alleviate our guilt to get out of paralysis so we can play bigger. Yeah. So I've said a lot and kind of went off on one of my things. So it's time for our break. Usually we take a break around now. So let's take a 6-minute break. Is 6 minutes about the right amount of time? Give a thumbs up if that's right, or if you think you need more. Thumbs up, 6 good? Okay. So 6-minute break. I'm going to put the recording on pause. Please do come back in 6 minutes, and we will get through the rest of this. Thank you. Welcome back. Just curious if anybody wants to share any big ahas or any significant Anaprabha.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, it's quite, I'm feeling a little emotional around the, this just the part, growing up in an alcoholic family, there's always, I realized I have a need for control to feel safe.
Yeah.
Now through this. But this aha that came about years ago, I had a boyfriend, very, very beautiful relationship. And at one point he told me, oh, you're so controlling. And I really didn't understand what he meant, because we lived a really out of control life actually. But that stuck with me. And I realized then, as years go by, that I'm controlling, or just to stay safe, coming out of this alcoholic family. And that can also work it's not always a negative thing to have control in your lifestyle, in your home. However, this morning, I always judge myself though about this type of control. You're so controlling. You know, I have kids, and you just want to keep your kids safe, you know, and alive, you know, and get them through. And that takes a lot of discipline as a parent. However, what you said was, I just finally had that I could accept I had a need for safety. So all of a sudden I got this acceptance of my controlling behavior, that I could accept that. And what needs I was trying to have was to feel safe and to be safe.
Yeah.
And through that acceptance, there's still some judgment around that. And it's almost so cellular, you know, but at least I'm getting more of a clear understanding and seeing it and watching it. But that word of acceptance, just acceptance for myself and that vulnerability of mine, and that little girl that comes up who is just wanting to be safe. And there's just different strategies employed, but that acceptance part is just really touched me deeply today. And so I just wanted to really feel that. So thank you.
Nice. Yeah. It's all twinkle. Really, that touches me. That's beautiful. And
Thanks.
yeah, let's not judge ourselves or anybody else for being controlling. We're just, it's the natural strategy for safety. Maybe one more comment. I said, Daniel.
Hi, everybody. So I just how I am understanding the guilt to acceptance. I think of it in a really simple way. You said like guilt is I am bad. And really moving to acceptance is I am good. And I'm trying to meet some needs. Not that I'm bad. Accepting myself.
Beautiful. 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 Yeah. You know, the thing about being bad, they did a very elaborate study of career criminals, and they found that the significant commonality was that when they were children, their parents told them they were bad. And so they grew up believing, I'm bad. And so some of them got really good at being bad. And that became the mindset. Oh, I'm bad. And so no bad children, no bad dogs, you know. There are choices that have hurtful consequences, but nobody's bad. And to take it a step further, I learned this from Paul Sterling, BSW, no bad, stupid, or wrong. No BSW. When are we falling into BSW? No bad, stupid, or wrong. Allison, I was seeing your hand up. Yeah.
Just a quick moment of levity. I teach my children about making good and bad choices, and how everyone has inherent worth and dignity. And so we talk about their choices and not about the person themselves. And so I'd hear my sons yelling from across the house, make good choices with that decision. Or they'll say to the dog, Bailey, was that a good choice? No biting. Was that a good choice? Think about your choices. So anyway, I just wanted to share that because it makes me laugh, and it also just makes, if we can just keep the lightness and the joy of our human fallibility and our inherent silliness in this process, healing cannot just be something that we have to do. It can be something that we want to do. And that gives its own reward. Just choosing the words that we let pass through the gate of our mouths can be soul work. It can be the deepest healing, and it can be fun. So
thank
that's
you,
all
Allison.
I wanted to say.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. Thank you. By the way, a reminder, and I think most of you are using it, but do, stuff going on. So if that's going on too long with something, you can always go into the chat box and see what's happening there. But there's some really, I'm noticing during the break I was reading, there's some really good stuff there. So I really always want to encourage people connecting that way too. And thank you for all the wisdom being shared today. All right, let's get back and try and get through this in the next 40 minutes. We have covered a lot of the main ones because a lot of the ones that Emily and I added during our time together were kind of more, anyway. All right, we are on from blame to understanding. That one is pretty easy, easier said than done.
Yeah.
Just, it's what we've been talking about. It's easy to blame someone, but remember, everyone at all times trying to meet their needs. So we can go to understanding by guessing or asking, what needs were you trying to meet? Why? Again, it's from why did you do that, which is blame, to wow, why did you do that, which is seeking to understand, right? And it says understanding, you could also say seeking to understand, right? That's how we go from blame to understanding. And you're seeing as we go further and further down the chart, they all start kind of interweaving with each other. They all become variations of certain similar themes and principles. The next one is shame to reassurance. From shame on you, to reassurance. Now, reassurance doesn't mean we necessarily condone what someone said or did. But, we have some really wonderful mothers in this group. I want to acknowledge the mothers who have spoken today and how hard it is to be a mother. Really, really hard to be a mom. And you guys do that all the time when you're with your children, especially when your children are smaller, right? Right? When your 4-year-old didn't hold their bladder and they peed on themselves, right? You didn't shame them. You gave them reassurance. It's okay. We'll clean it up, right? So how can we maintain that? How can we maintain what those of you who had children or, when my dog poops, well, it's the cutest little poops in the world, right? They're just such adorable little poops, right? So how can we maintain that unconditional love we have for my little puppy's poops or your little kid's poops or the little hamster poops or, the things that, and I choose poop because poop can also be something that we have tremendous shame about, right? We don't poop in front of each other, right? So how can we maintain that level of reassurance on the things that we have shame about ourselves and shame about others? And definitely one of the most hurtful things we can ever say to another person is shame on you. Shame on you. I immediately think of a, organized religion that shamed people. I've worked with many clients who, when they left certain more cult-like religions, I won't name them, but there's certain cult-like religions that if you leave, you are shamed, you are excommunicated. Your own mother will disavow you. You no longer are part of the family. We're talking serious shame. But all of us, all human beings, have to deal with, I call it the great human epidemic of shame. And it's a human epidemic of shame. Shame that I have sexual desire. Shame that I poop. Shame that I, as a man, get an erection. Shame for a woman that I have acne or that I have small breasts or whatever it is. Because there's so many cultural ideas of beauty, manhood, womanhood, shame that I'm getting older, shame that I'm not old enough. There's so much cultural indoctrination of what you're supposed to be, and if you're anything less than a superhero, then the shame comes in. And a lot of religious indoctrination. Christ suffered and died, was tortured, suffered, crucified on the cross for your sins. Boy, that's a pretty heavy-duty shame, right? And I'm not putting down the Christian religion when I say that, but there's just so much indoctrination of shame, and underneath it, we just want reassurance. It's okay. Let's clean it up. It's okay. You're just who you are, and who you are is beautiful and perfect. You know, I'm really glad to see that there's a Mr. Rogers movie. Okay, I haven't seen it yet. It just came out. And already Daniel, I want to acknowledge Daniel right away, went to see it and said, Scott, you got to go see it. And I love Mr. Rogers. And Mr. Rogers, that was his whole thing, was not to shame children, but to provide reassurance. Almost every Mr. Rogers message is breaking the shame cycle and replacing it with reassurance. I haven't seen the movie yet, but I've studied Mr. Rogers, and I've seen the previous documentaries, and that was almost always what he would do. He would take something that children might feel shame over and turn it into reassurance. Daniel, is there anything from the movie that you want to share that kind of goes along with that?
Well, it was so good. But he always, he always encouraged the kids to feel what they're feeling. And that was like a big message in the movie. To really allow yourself to feel the feelings. I think that was the biggest thing I got out of it. And it was beautiful how they weaved the story into more of a movie-like context, and how healing that can be, even for an adult who still has trauma and wounds from their relationship to their parents. Yeah.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Allison.
Just really quickly, because I want you to be able to keep going, but Mr. Rogers is so important in our family. My son and I did a sermon on Mr. Rogers at our church, and we, a Unitarian church, so it was, we brought a puppet show with us and did a puppet show. But I just wanted to say that Mr. Rogers developed a lot of his teachings about shame because he felt a lot of shame for being the richest child in town. His parents were extremely wealthy, and they lived in an industrial place, in Pittsburgh, or near Pittsburgh, is a smaller town. And he was the one who had all the nice things. And his parents were huge philanthropists in town, but you couldn't, he would, because he had asthma and because he had a lot of health issues growing up as a child, the air wasn't so clean, so he would often be taken out of school to learn at home when the other children were still at school. He got picked up by a chauffeur every day to go home for lunch. And so he felt a lot of separation. It was really hard for him to make friends, and so he made friends with puppets. And he developed this inner life of telling these stories. And so out of this shame was born this beautiful reassurance for all these other children who might have felt that. He took his own pain and turned it into the most kind teachings that influenced countless generations of children. So I could go on and on. I think he's amazing. But I just wanted to share that because I didn't know that about him before. I just learned it recently. I'm reading one of the biographies, by the way, it's narrated by the Reading Rainbow guy, LeVar Burton. Totally recommend it. And I can't remember the title, but if I do, I'll put it in the comments.
Thank you. That was great. And I did not know those things. So thank you, Daniel, and thank you, Allison. Twinkle them both, twinkling Daniel, twinkling Allison, and twinkling Mr. Rogers up in the sky. Thank you, Mr. Rogers. One last thing on Mr. Rogers I just got to share. I produced children's television, and that's what I won my Emmy Awards for. And Back then, to be honest, everybody used to joke and make fun of Mr. Rogers because he wasn't cool. Sesame Street was cool. And there was actually, in the kind of children's television field that I was a part of back then, there was a lot of, oh, Mr. Rogers, 10 minutes putting on a sweater, 15 minutes with a potato. And then the long-term studies began to come out. And what came out was that children who were raised on Sesame Street, 1, 2, 3, fast, quick, boom, and then go to MTV, big attention deficit disorder. The kids who were raised with Fred Rogers, who would spend 15 minutes with a potato and took forever buttoning that damn sweater, much, much lower incidence of attention deficit disorder. And so he actually was the incredible alternative to this high-tech, super fast-paced world that we now are in. And it was all about connection and slowing down and being present to buttoning the sweater and present to the potato and present to, like Daniel said, our feelings, right? So I just got to say, it's been interesting, my journey of, I can remember 30 years ago making jokes about Mr. Rogers, and now he's a saint, And sometimes it takes time for us to understand the wisdom and the medicine that somebody has to offer when it's different from what is culturally popular. So, okay, let's go back to our chart here. So the next one is from criticism to appreciation. From criticism to appreciation. So this one, I always like to mention that I don't believe there's such a thing as constructive criticism. And here's something to remember. When any of us are criticized, we contract. We become less capable of bringing in information or data. When we're appreciated, our little receptor cells get all happy and we open. So if you're trying to convey something important to someone, do not criticize them. Appreciate them. You can even say, I so appreciate your willingness to listen to what's important to me. I so appreciate your willingness to let me show you how I like it to be done, right? If it's like, oh, don't do it that way. You're supposed to do it this way. Contraction, I'm defending myself. But if it's like, oh, wow, I'd love to show you because I so appreciate you and our connection is so important. Can I show you how I like that? How I like to be touched? How I like it done? I so appreciate your willingness to hear this. It's important to me. And I'd love us to have the best relationship possible. It's a whole different thing, right? So really learning how, because under criticism, usually we're trying to convey something we want or need. Learn how to do it through the language of appreciation. Does it make sense to everybody? Yeah. Yeah. And, so much of Debbie's wonderful work, gratitude is appreciation, right? And I mean, Debbie has done such a wonderful job doing her gratitude thing, and she's starting another one, which I encourage everybody to participate in. And I'll let her at the end talk about that today. All the science that she's coming up with about how gratitude changes our brain chemistry and changes our experience and changes our medical situation and our health. It's just like appreciation, which is gratitude. It's the great healing balm. So again, now the hard part is noticing, when am I critical? When am I critical of myself? When am I critical of others? And how can I pivot into appreciation? How can I make that appreciation? Again, it's a reminder of what I said before. Underneath my judgment or my criticism are my unmet needs and values. And so I can appreciate that those values or needs are important to me. And as I'm judging your actions, which of your needs and values are you trying to meet by those actions? And I can appreciate those values and needs because they're universal. So everybody get that equation? You all get that? Okay. Anupama.
Just a quick thing. I really have such a direct experience between appreciation and criticism, and also around the acceptance. Working, like as I said, coming up in an alcoholic family, really it's afraid to speak a lot, and you're always thinking, maybe am I saying the right thing? And so now I'm a singer, but to become a singer, it took a lot. And I've worked with a lot of guys, and guys can be really, sorry guys, but bands can be very critical. And so I started as a drummer, and because I was just afraid to open my mouth. And sometimes when I opened my mouth to sing, I wasn't right on key. And then I got more contracted because I would get criticism. But this is my passion. I love this. I just kept on singing and playing. And then getting with a band, I saw this, eventually just getting with a group of musicians. And also another singer that I work with now also came out of an alcoholic family. And this whole band all of a sudden has so much, we love each other so much, and there's so much appreciation and connection and respect for each other's. And that has allowed all of us to blossom in ways that we hadn't experienced before. And I just realized this is what this is what it takes, just acceptance and appreciation. Like, not because the criticism just caused, especially if you're really vulnerable and fragile anyway to doing it. If you feel like, if I can't do it right, I just don't want to do it at all, right? But just the openness and the support just allows you to just open and try. And when you really feel that energy there for you, it's amazing what's possible. Everything's possible. Anything's possible when people are loving you and appreciating you and reassuring you. And then you're able just to take that leap, and jump into the unknown, which is where the magic is, right? So, yeah.
Beautiful. That's all Twinkle on a Prabha. That was awesome. Thank you so much for that. Thank you. As you said that, it was reminding me that, and this is as coaches, something to remember. All it takes is an authority figure to criticize somebody once, and that person can have a permanent contraction about that. What's wrong with you? You just can't do math, can you? And that child might have a Mensa level of intelligence, but the moment math comes up, they contract. What's wrong with you? You throw like a girl. That boy, every time he goes to throw now, his arm will contract and he'll struggle to throw. As a coach, and I think I might have shared this story recently with you guys, but if it's a repeat, I apologize. I was working with a woman, and her issue is she's actually a very physically attractive woman, but she believes that she's ugly. And when her boyfriend would say, "You are so beautiful," she couldn't take it in, and it would really bug him. So we did some work on it, and she said, "I've always known I'm ugly." And I said, "Well, where did you get that idea?" So we kind of went I took her into a bit of a semi-hypnotic state. I don't put people into full hypnosis, but I took her back to, when's the first time that you perceived you were ugly? And all of a sudden, she has this amazing memory of being on the playground around 7 years old or so, maybe 6. And there's this freckle-faced boy. All she could remember, he was red hair, freckle-faced, but he was older, and he's looking at her going, "You're really ugly. You know how ugly you are?" She had not thought of this memory in probably 30 years, but she all of a sudden saw this little freckle-faced bugger. And that little bugger, who maybe she was 7 and maybe he was 9, right? But at that time, that difference of whatever it was, 2 years, 3 years, is a huge difference. He's an authority figure, and he taught her that she was ugly. Isn't that something? Isn't that something? And you know what? Most of us, and most of the people you'll work with as friends and clients, have stuff like that. That somebody, some authority figure taught us a lie. And we have spent our life living that lie. and often collecting evidence to support the lie. And especially for those of you where, or those people where it was a big authority figure, mom or dad, right? So criticism it's so cruel. And I mean, you know, that little red-haired kid, what a cruel thing he did, right? And who knows, he was probably just trying to meet his need to feel like a big man or to feel something. But look at the horrible impact it had. So yeah, Allison, you're up.
I just really quickly, I'm noticing, and in the children I work with, that it's actually becoming trendy to be self-critical. That kids are watching other people's self-criticism, whether it be a parent or another authority figure, and they are. This is a real mind bleep that I said bleep because my kids are in the next room. I'm seeing it a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm concerned about it because I think it's easy for us to decide not to be critical of our children or of other people around us, but they're watching and seeing if we're critical with ourselves. I will never forget my sister saying to me, Mom was always criticizing her legs and thighs and saying that they were really too fat. And I have her legs. So even though she never said anything like that to me, I heard that as I have ugly legs and they're never going to be good enough. So I think, sorry, I don't want to go on too long because I know I have that tendency. But I think we need to not just monitor being critical in the way that we interact with others, but also how we turn that knife inward. Because when we destroy ourselves or knock ourselves down in front of impressionable people, they will internalize that that is the right way to be.
Yeah, you're absolutely, yeah. Big twinkling. Thank you, Allison. You're absolutely right. Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna go back to the chart, but thank you for that. Thank you, everybody, for your such a wonderful group of people here. Really appreciating all of you. All right, there we go. I want to acknowledge Emily for this next one. This is one that came up. Going from comparison and jealousy to celebration and compersion. And you know, I want to acknowledge that, of course, it came from Emily because Emily is very curious and interested in alternative lifestyles, open relationship. And I'm not in this moment promoting that, but we all have experienced when we go into comparison or jealousy. We've all done that, you know. We've all do that, and it's painful. It's really, jealousy is a really uncomfortable emotion, and people have asked, is jealousy an emotion? I absolutely believe it is. I think that there are emotions and sensations that we experience with jealousy. And the reason we ended with that, comparison is what happens in the mind that then triggers the emotion or the feeling of jealousy, right? So the mind goes into comparison, the emotional response or reaction is jealousy. And so then what we want to learn how to do is, can we celebrate the, what we're observing? And of course that happens, let's take the hardest ones. What is it like for you when you're seeing someone you once were in love with somebody else? How is that for you? Because that's where the comparison and jealousy is most likely to show up in our life. And most of us have experienced being in love with somebody and it doesn't work out or it changes and now they're with somebody else. I'm experiencing it in a wonderful way because Emily, who I was with for 4.5 years, still lives next door to me. Her mother still lives in my house. And Emily has a new boyfriend, and they're all over Facebook, and they live next door. So I'm personally getting a wonderful opportunity to practice this particular one that, ironically, Emily wrote when we were in a relationship with each other. Some of you might be wondering, what does compersion mean? And compersion is the ability to celebrate another person's joy, to really, to really acknowledge somebody else's joy, pleasure, and to really celebrate it and feel good about it, even though you're not directly experiencing it. So it's a good one. Anything that comes up for anybody that anybody wants to share or ask or anything? Debbie.
That's like my favorite word on the planet. When we say compersion, it rolls off your tongue. Compersion just has this thing about it. I learned it from Scott and Emily. If you can imagine, what I love about this word is not only can we get in joy and celebration over others' accomplishments and their successes and where they're at in life, but also I look at it like, when you're watching a baby take their first steps, we get into joy and we get into compersion, that state of compersion with them. So if we can remember to be in joy and elation and a state of compersion with other people where that they're truly at and celebrate them, kind of all goes back to that showing up for others as you would love for them to show up for you. But I also want to say, Scott, I love your vulnerable display of, hey, I've got this beautiful opportunity to experience this right now. I'm not wanting to switch spaces with you at this moment because my heart is like, that would be a tough one. Like when Dennis and I were together for 13 years and I know he's living with somebody right now and all that, it's not up in my face. What's cool is I actually am happy. I want him joyful. I mean, it's like this thing of I'm really stoked about it. There's just nothing there for me to, I don't compare myself to it because it's like the person I was when I was with him and the person he was when he was with me is not who he is now or I am now. So our alignment just isn't the same anymore. But this word compersion has, in so many different spaces, allowed me to, when I'm online, people that are successful or whatever it is they're doing, I love that state of compersion I can be in with them and celebrating who that they are. And I've really found it. That's another one. That and curiosity. I guess I like the C words,
Yeah.
But Scott, my heart is with you though, because I know that shit's not easy. I don't care who you are. We're human, perfectly human.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that, Debbie. Thank you. Okay, good. It is working. Thank you. I appreciate that. Deborah Haviland, I have unmuted you and spotlight's on you.
Yeah, I think the comparison jealousy thing is very hard. And, I've been on both sides of the coin and more recently, even with a dear beloved friend here, I won't say any names, have experienced receiving the jealousy. And I think jealousy is very linked to fear. So I love what we're doing here because it gives me deep compassion for my friend that she was feeling fear of loss and came up with a strategy. And, I ended up feeling shamed and wrong and made wrong and criticized and ostracized and, different things. My tent thrown out of the car and go fend for yourself. And I just want to say how much I love you. And I'm so glad we're doing this. And I hope for a deep conversation. So I just want to have compassion for myself and my friend and other people when we've felt that fear. the fear of jealousy. I remember feeling it when I was married, and sometimes my husband would be abusive, and then the doorbell would ring, and a beautiful woman would be at the door, and he'd be, "Oh, how are you? Oh," you know, and I mean the incredible pain.
Oh God, yeah.
I felt feeling dishonored,
Yeah. Thank you.
abused, dishonored.
Oh my. Thank you, Deborah, for pointing out the fear element. You know, the fear of loss, the fear of I'm not going to get my needs met. Again, it's all. Oh my God, the jealousy is so connected to the fear of my needs aren't going to get met, or my needs don't matter. You know, somebody else is going to, and it's, I guess, connected to scarcity. I guess there's another word that comes in, is that fear of scarcity. Like, oh, if I can't get it from this person, I'm not going to get it at all, right?
Yeah,
So,
or that if I share, like if I see that person, the person that I want, hugging that person, it doesn't mean they're going to go away or I'm going to be abandoned. Or wow, if I could get to that place that Debbie Garcia just said, or that you said around Emily, I want to be big enough and mature enough to be happy that they're hugging, and then I'll get back to my flow with them. So I also want to acknowledge you, Scott. I have just seen, I mean, in that we're all sort of in similar age groups here and growing and walking on the path. The fact that you have gone through like loss and then this compassion and accepting and all of the growth that comes with having your girlfriend live next door with another man, the wisdom you're sharing now is so profound. I just constantly feel very grateful for your presence and what you're sharing.
Thank you. Thank you, Deborah. I appreciate that. You know what? We only got, so I'm going to not call on anybody else for a little bit because I want to get through the rest of this and try and finish by close to 12. But thank you for everybody's shares. Really appreciating it. All right. And then this next one is from the reactive mind to the vulnerable heart. Now, most of you were there when I did the class on going from reptile brain reaction to frontal lobe responsiveness. So that's what that whole 45 minutes was about. And that is a powerful 45-minute video. But again, it shows up in this way, going from our reactive mind, and usually that's our reptile brain. When we're in reptile brain, we perceive we've been attacked, into our vulnerable heart. And the vulnerable heart is actually the frontal lobe. So it's going from the reptile brain, which is the back part of the brain, into the frontal lobe and the temporal lobe, which is where the empathy center of the brain is, and the observer part of the brain is. So I'm not going to go long on that because we've already really processed that a lot in this particular class. This next one is also a really good one. They're all good. From grasping for what we want, or being attached and holding on to something, to receiving and being open. And just that visual of this versus this. And boy, notice, where in life do we grasp for things, and where are we just open and receptive? I don't know if any of you, I made a meditation tape, which I put up there. I don't know if any of you have listened to it. But for those of you who have, or if maybe after you hear this, you'll be inspired to listen to it. The whole point of that meditation tape that I'm practicing these days, and I want to acknowledge that I learned most of this from Reverend Michael. Instead of our prayer being beseeching God to give us what we want, the idea is that we open to being receptive and listening to what God or life, whatever you want to call it, the Holy Spirit, we'll call it life, listening to how life wants to show up through us. So prayer can sometimes be grasping because we so want something. But maybe what we want isn't to our highest good. Whereas when prayer becomes, we quiet the mind, we slow down and we drop into receptivity. How does life want to show up through me at this time? How does God, existence, want to experience itself through me at this time? What wants to happen here? I've been working with a family recently where a significant member of the family was in a really, really, really horrific accident. And he was on life support. And one particular member of the family, his sister, said he would not want this. We have to take him off. But his father and other sister wanted to keep him on. And so I've been very involved in kind of counseling them on it. And certainly not telling them what to do or not do. But again, it coming up to really what wants to happen here, right? Does he want to live? And he has come back out. He's on some life support, but they had to amputate his hands. And he probably will be in a wheelchair. And it's been a really tough one of, wow, would he want to live like this? And he's young, he's in his early 50s and living in Hawaii and played harmonica and guitar. And I mean, his life is going to be very different. His life is going to be very, very different. And I just kept bringing us back to maximum grace. Pray for maximum grace. And I learned this from Yogananda. The highest prayer according to Yogananda is, don't pray, please may he live, please, we don't know what's best. Maximum grace. Maximum grace. It's a beautiful shift in the way that we think. And it's connected to this way of thinking. Instead of grasping for what we think is best, for what we think we want. Please, God, I just need to get this job. I just need to get this job. Please, may this person fall in love with me. Please, we don't know if that's what's best for us. Maximum grace for my financial abundance. Maximum grace for me to experience what life really wants to have happen to me at this time. So it's a change in the stage of development where we're manifesting, which is beautiful, by setting our ego or our mind on what it is we want, into trusting, having faith. And definitely faith is a big part of this, having faith and being open and receptive for spirit to flow through us. And it's an ongoing practice, because I was a very type A personality when I was a kid and a teenager, and I was very successful as a result of being very type A. And more, my evolution has been, I'm a clear channel for spirit to flow through. I'm a clear channel for spirit to flow through. Life, how do you want to flow through me? What wants to happen here? And honestly, that helps me with the whole Emily thing. Honestly, I can look at Emily and Michael, her new boyfriend. They're great together. It's a good fit. I see it. I get it. I really get it. Thank God I like the guy. But I can see it, And so it's like, oh yeah, of course. It's a natural fit. They're a good fit for each other. And so when we're grasping onto what we want, we can't see it that clearly. When we let go and we see it more clearly, it's, oh yeah, that makes sense. That totally makes sense. I can see that. And it feels much better. It feels much better when we can see clearly. And we have to move out of that grasping thing to be able to be receptive and to see clearly. Yeah. I apologize. It's 12. I'm like maybe hopefully 10 more minutes to continue. Is everybody okay time-wise? Yeah? Okay. Here we go. So, almost done here. From deception to transparency. And the really hard to do, but the simple solution is safety. We are deceptive or dishonest. Emily and I went back and forth between what word to use, whether to use dishonesty, lying, and we chose deception. Um, and originally we had honesty, but we changed it to transparency because an even deeper level of honesty, right? So going from that part of us that wants to be deceptive usually because we feel shame, because we feel embarrassed, because we're afraid if I'm honest or transparent, I will be punished. I will be judged. I will be criticized. So in order to be transparent, we need to feel safe. So that's where we choose who can I be transparent with. I can be really transparent with Debbie Garcia. Debbie's somebody that I've learned in my life. I can say pretty much anything and she's not going to judge me. As a coach, I really work hard to do whatever it takes for my clients to trust I will never judge you. I will not judge you. It's safe to tell me what's going on with you. But, I recently ended a relationship with somebody that I really love and will always love, but she was really judgmental. It wasn't safe for me to share my more vulnerable things with. And so it's all about safety. If you want someone to be honest and transparent, please do whatever you can to make it safe. Do not punish them. Don't criticize or judge or make them feel bad for what they said or did. Thank them for their honesty. Thank them for their vulnerability. Thank them for their transparency. Even if what they're being honest or transparent about is really uncomfortable. Sense to everybody? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I'll go to the last one then. And the last one is from playing victim to really empowered responsibility. And again, this dovetails into what we've talked about in previous classes. The foundation of emotional intelligence is self-reflection and taking responsibility for our choices. The foundation of nonviolent communication, I am 100% responsible for my thoughts, my feelings, and my needs. Now, us have played victim at some time in our life, and all of us, or some of us, still do in certain parts, right? So we're not judging any stage of development. We're not judging any of us for being in any of the places on the red side of any of those words. We've all done it, and we all have the potential to do it 5 minutes from now. Okay? So it's a constant practice. It's a process. Oh, there we go. I'm in victim. I'm in victim. And victim can show up in any number of ways. We can feel I'm victimized by any number of things, by being a man, by being a woman, by being wealthy, by being poor, by being older, by being younger, by being Christian or Jewish or progressive or Republican. Any role or any aspect of ourselves, we can perceive that we're a victim because there's somebody who doesn't like us because I'm a progressive New Thought guy, or because I have long hair, or because I'm a man, right? So all day long, there's cultural beliefs that we react to, especially when there's anybody or anything out there in the external world that we perceive. Anything out there, any or situation or anything in the outside world that we perceive judges us, criticizes us, makes us wrong. When we're in that perception, we are in victim. So it happens all day long. Victim isn't just the obvious thing of, oh, poor me, you've got to help me because I'm helpless. No, it's anytime we're in the perception that someone's judging us, criticizing us, making us wrong. And we will be judged, and we will be criticized, and we will be made wrong. we flip it into empowered responsibility by recognizing what somebody else thinks of me does not have to impact me. You know, there's that famous phrase, what you think of me is none of my business. And so there's the empowered responsibility of whatever is going on outside of there, I need to be true to myself, proud of myself, appreciating myself, honoring myself. A great teacher of mine said, when you honor yourself fully, you honor the entire universe. When you honor yourself fully, you honor the entire universe. And anytime we buy into the fear or the pain of an external world judgment or criticism, we're not honoring ourselves fully. I'm still trying to grasp it, but Aaron sent me some really cool audio messages last night and this morning that they're like deep. But if I'm understanding the medicine that Aaron is sharing, it's that when we can really transcend judgment and criticism and remember that we all are divinity is when the great ascension or the great raising consciousness that we're perceiving as possible and hopefully probable happens. Did I get that right, Aaron? Yeah. So I think I'm going to end on that. I know that it's 12:07. You know what I'll do is I will end the official part of the class, so anybody who needs to go can. But I can stick around for about 10 more minutes. If anybody has other thoughts or anything they want to share, or any ahas that came up, and I'll try and be quiet and not do any more teaching or lecturing or scholarliness, and just open it up to anything that anybody else wants to share. So yeah, thank you for the twinkling. And anybody who has to leave, thank you for staying this long. And who would like to share something? Debbie.
I'll make this quick before I do have to get going. But I wanted to just say, in the judgment of ourselves and everything else, I want you guys to consider how many thousands of different versions of you that there is walking around this planet. For everyone that we meet and everyone that we encounter, they see us through their own lens. It's not our lens, and we're trying to see ourselves through the lens that they see us in, rather than really taking a look through our own lens to see who we truly are. We're not who the world has told us we should be, but rather looking to see who we are within. And that's really all I had to say about that, because when we're too hard on ourselves, whose lenses are you looking through? We've got to, I mean, Scott, how many different lenses do you think there are? I mean, there are a million? Seriously?
Well, there's 8 billion people on the planet, so there's at least 8 billion lenses, right? And then,
right? Everybody's got their own.
Absolutely. And from a metaphysical point of view, a mystical point of view, there's only one of us here in 8 billion different lenses, 8 billion different bodies. Who else wants to share something? Thank you, Debbie. Twinkle, twinkle. Hannah, we get to hear from Hannah. Yay.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
I was struck by, well, I guess I'll start it this way. I'm gathering and getting that one of the strategies to move out of fear and pain is to reflect on our needs and our values, and that helps us to move into love and connection. And another strategy that I tend to use is looking at how am I identifying with something X, Y, and Z, and that's come up a lot. I've seen in these conversations. I am bad because my parents said I'm bad and I believe them, and so therefore I'm going to act in ways that I believe are bad because that fits my identity, who I am. And I am ugly, same thing. And So, and that's striking me because someone messaged me the other day because of a post or a story I shared or something, and shared with me, you know, just this really candid, basically, it's really hard. Like, why does life have to change? Basically, why does life have to change? And so all of this that we're talking about is being in a curious, willing, growth mindset sort of space where we can accept change in our life. We can accept that life is constant change. Life is happening through us. And that means we're changing. And one of the things that makes that difficult, the reason why for me it's important to look at how am I identifying with, is because I realize that it's really difficult to accept that what we have known to be true is changing, because we have grown and developed and become who we are through what we have known. And so when life changes, we feel like we're losing ourselves or some very special, important aspect of ourselves. And that's really painful and really confusing. And it can cause a lot of resistance. So it can be helpful for me to, if I can name what it is I'm identifying with, as well as my value and my need, that can really help me to shift.
Thank you. One big twinkle for you. Thank you very much, Hannah. It was beautiful. Anyone else want to share anything? Okay. Well, thank you. Really beautiful class. Really beautiful. And this is one of those ones, like, feel free to take this video and watch it again with your family or with a friend or whatever. I think it's the 12 adjustments is a really good one to go through, and please print it out, put it all over. I will post later on today. And the chat, I will also put the chat box in a way that's available for people to read, because there's some really beautiful things in the chat. I'm going to want to go back and read it. Oh, right. Debbie has reminded me that tonight at 8 o'clock, Debbie and I are going to be doing a Facebook Live all about consequences. And our guest is a friend and a client of mine, Timothy. And the three of us could be talking about how to own vulnerably the hurtful consequences of choices we've made in our life. So it's going to be a pretty deep one. So that's at 8 p.m. tonight. And also just looking at when we go outside of our personal integrity and the consequences of that. Debbie, anything you want to add about tonight?
Well, I'm really looking forward to this. I think this is going to be deep, and I think that we're really going to get to practice compassionate communication live. And I just would love everybody to be there. It'll be on the Spirituality Gone Wild page on Facebook. And yeah, I'd love you guys to have you there. And that is Pacific, by the way. So that is California time,
right,
which is 8 o'clock. Yeah, this is what us singles do, right, Scott? We go on Saturday Night Live.
That's right, exactly.
Well, we did it. We did it last week. We had almost 3,000 views.
Yeah, it was a good one last week. And tonight's going to be great too. So I will see you definitely, Debbie, tonight, and hopefully see the rest of you, if not tonight, hopefully tonight, if not on Wednesday. Take care, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful day, a wonderful weekend.